Hi everybody. Today I'm going to talk to you about Roman government. And it's a pretty big history that we're going to talk about in a short amount of time. The first thing I want to tell you about is the way Roman society was structured. There were two classes of people. The first group were the patricians. They were the wealthy landowners. They were a small percentage of the people, but they had the most wealth and the most power. The other group were called the plebeians, and the plebeians was basically everybody else. People who worked, who had small homes, who were just not really wealthy. Probably people like me. I would be a plebeian. There were, of course, also slaves living in Rome. Then we're going to talk about how the patricians started the Roman Republic. Before this, Rome had been run by kings, and there had been Roman kings, and there had been kings from up north, and what we call Etruscan kings. But eventually the patricians kicked out all the other kings and decided to start a new kind of government. And the kind of government they started was called a republic. And the republic was like the Athenian democracy in that it was run by the people. The people, though, that they meant were really the patricians. So that, again, was a small group of wealthy people. And what they did was they set up a Senate, which, of course, we use that word in our government as well. Their Senate had 300 members who were all patricians at first. Every year, the 300 members would vote and choose two of their members to be what's called consuls. And the consuls would kind of be in charge for a year. And they could make decisions about things like war and all of that. They were a little bit like the president of the United States, but not for very long, and just for a year. And there were two of them. Some of the things that the Senate did was first of all, they served for life. They were not replaced every couple of years. So as long as they were alive, they were senators. So that meant that there wasn't a lot of change in the senators. They made laws. They made decisions about who would be in charge of what around around Rome and eventually around the Roman Empire. They could also be judges as well. Let's see, what else do I want to tell you? So after a while, the plebeians started feeling like they needed to have more voice in the government. So they started rebelling against patricians. And eventually the patricians gave in, and the plebeians were able to get more rights. In fact, over time, they were able to be senators. They were able to even be consuls at different times. And you're going to read a little bit about this process, what they did to rebel and what the stages were to get them to have more equality in the Senate. The Roman Republic has a big influence on our government. There's a lot that's the same about it. The Roman Republic set up a constitution. We use a constitution, of course, in our government. They had a Senate. We have a Senate. They had representatives in the Senate. Now, if you remember the Roman democracy, every citizen voted on every issue. Well, there's no way we could do that in the United States. We're too big. So what we do is we elect representatives, like senators or congressmen, to vote on laws on our behalf. And that's just the way the Republic did it. So we actually technically are called a democratic republic. We're like a combination of the Greek ideas, the Roman ideas, and modern ideas too. You're going to see in the slideshow that there's two periods of Roman government. One is the Republic that I just talked about, and the second is when the Republic was over and the Roman Empire began. The Roman Republic lasted from about 509 BCE to about 27 BC. So it's like about 500 years. And over time, the people sort of lost faith in some of the senators. The senators were getting kind of greedy, even the plebeian ones. And At that time, around 59 BCE, along came someone you might have heard of named Julius Caesar. And Julius Caesar was a Roman general, and he was having a lot of success, and he was really famous, especially in Gaul, which is today what we call France. When he returned to Rome, he was super popular, and the people wanted him to be in the Senate. So he was in the Senate, and he got more power and more power and more power. And the senators were trying to figure out how to not let him get all the power. So they eventually decided the only way to do that was to kill him. So they did. And if you remember, we talked about Beware the Ides of March. Well, he was murdered on March 15th and 44 BCE. And the senators thought, okay, well, now things will go back to normal, but that's not what happened. The people were so mad at the senators for killing their hero, Julius Caesar, that they really lost support. And then along came Julius Caesar's grandnephew. His name was Octavian. And he started getting a lot more power because the people liked him because they liked Caesar so much. Eventually, after some different things happened with a queen named Cleopatra that you might have heard about, and her Roman boyfriend, Mark Antony, which is an exciting story, and I will share that with you at a different time. Eventually, Octavian was able to take control of the government. He changed his name to Augustus. That's right, Augustus. You know him, my boyfriend. We're finally talking about him. So Augustus became the only ruler of the Roman Empire. And the Senate continued to exist, and they would give the emperor advice and things like that, but they really didn't have any power anymore. It was all the power of the emperor. For 200 years after Augustus became the emperor, of course, he didn't rule for 200 years, but for a 200-year period, we have what's called the Pax Romana. And the Pax Romana means Roman peace. Romana means Roman, and Pax is Latin for peace. And it was kind of a golden age during this time that was the economy was really good. A lot of buildings were being built, and things were pretty good. And Augustus started that. So again, this slideshow is about two periods of Roman government, the Roman Republic and then the Roman Empire. Bye.